What if the very child you raised with love, the one you gave everything for, abandoned you when you needed him most?
You need to leave right now. You need to leave right now.
This is the heartbreaking story of Grace, a mother betrayed by her own son. Before we go any further, if this is your first time watching one of our videos, we'd love you to subscribe to our channel. Your support means everything, and it helps us bring you even more interesting stories. Stick with us till the very end, and if the story moves you, drop your thoughts in the comments and share with your loved ones. Now let's begin. Grace was not born rich. She was not born into comfort. Life never handed her anything on a silver plate. She married young, and together with her husband they lived in a small, mud-walled house at the edge of the village. They were poor, but there was love, at least, until sickness came and snatched her husband away, leaving her alone with a little boy still too young to understand what death meant. From that day, Grace's life changed. The whole burden of survival fell on her thin shoulders. She worked from dawn till dusk, bending her back in the farms of wealthier families just to earn a little food. And yet, every coin she saved, every meal she cooked, every tear she wiped away, it was all for her son. Michael became her reason to live. She would look into his eyes at night, his small frame curled up beside her on their straw mat, and whisper, "My son, you will be great one day. Your mother may suffer now, but you will shine." But greatness, she knew, came at a cost. School fees, uniforms, books, these things were luxuries that Grace could barely afford. But she refused to give up. She sold her only jewelry, the earrings her husband had given her on their wedding day. She sold the little clay pots she once used to trade in the market. She even sold her old farm tools, the very things she needed to work, all for Michael's education. And still, the money was never enough. So she began to sacrifice her meals. When food was scarce, she would give Michael the larger share and chew on roasted cassava peels to quiet her own hunger. Her body grew thinner, her face lined with stress, but she kept smiling whenever Michael was around. "Eat, my son," she would say, sliding her bowl toward him. "Don't worry about me. Just eat and grow strong." Little Michael, innocent and trusting, never knew how much his mother was suffering. To him, she was just Mummy, always there, always smiling, always making things work. But the village knew. Neighbors whispered about her sacrifices. Some admired her, others pitied her. "That woman is killing herself for that boy," they said. But Grace didn't care what people thought. She had only one dream, that her son would stand where she could never stand, go where she could never go, and live a life free from the chains of poverty. Years passed. Michael grew into a bright young man, sharp and ambitious. Grace's sacrifices bore fruit. He excelled in his studies, earning the respect of his teachers. Each time he returned home with a good report card, Grace's tired eyes lit up with joy. "Ah, God has not forgotten me," she would whisper, clutching the paper to her chest. "My son will be great." But behind those prayers lay a body breaking down. Her hands were rough from endless farm work. Her feet cracked from walking miles to fetch water. At night, when Michael was asleep, she would sit in the darkness, massaging her aching knees and whispering to herself, "Endure just a little longer. One day, this boy will stand tall, and all this pain will be worth it." There were days she fell sick. Her body begged her to rest. But she pushed herself back up, because rest meant no money, and no money meant her son's dreams would die. And so, Grace carried on, alone, sacrificing everything, dreaming of the day when her little boy would finish school and change both their lives forever. Little did she know, the same boy she gave her life for would one day turn his back on her. Michael grew up just as Grace had prayed, strong, intelligent, and determined. Against all odds, he finished secondary school. The day he received his certificate, Grace danced in the dusty compound with bare feet, tears of joy streaming down her face. "My son has done it!" she cried, clutching his hand. "Ah, my husband in heaven, do you see? Our child is going places." Neighbors gathered to congratulate her. Some shook their heads in amazement. How could a poor widow raise such a brilliant boy? They knew the answer. Sacrifice. Pure, painful sacrifice. Soon, Michael got an opportunity to move to the city for further studies. Grace sold her last piece of land, the only inheritance left from her late husband, just to pay his way. "Go, my son," she said, pressing the money into his hands. "Don't look back. Shine so that the world will know your name." Michael promised. He hugged her tightly and whispered, "Mother, I will make you proud. I will change your life." And then he left. Life in the city was different. Michael studied hard, made friends, and after some years, he secured a good job. At last, the light of success had begun to shine on him. His salary was not much at first, but to Grace, even the little he sent home was gold. She would show the neighbors with pride. "See, my son is now a working man in the city." She wore her suffering like a crown of joy, because she believed her reward was finally coming. But something else began to grow in Michael: pride. The more he earned, the more he changed. His clothes grew finer, his shoes shinier, his friends wealthier. And in their midst, he began to feel ashamed of his mother. One day, Grace traveled to the city to see her son. She borrowed money for transport and carried a basket of vegetables from her farm as a gift. When she arrived at his office, she stood outside in her faded wrapper, her feet dusty from the long journey. "Please," she asked the receptionist, smiling shyly, "can you tell Michael that his mother is here?" When Michael came out and saw her standing there, poor tired, with her rough hands clutching the basket, his face hardened. His friends were nearby. He felt embarrassed. "Mother," he said sharply, pulling her aside, "why did you come here like this? You could have just called me." "But my son," she said softly, "I wanted to see you with my own eyes. It has been long." She tried to hand him the basket. "Take, I brought you some vegetables." He looked at it with disgust. "Mother, please, don't bring this village food here. People are watching." The words pierced her heart like a knife. She swallowed hard, forcing a smile. "It is fine, my son. Forgive me." That day, Michael gave her little attention. He gave her some money and sent her back home quickly, as if she were an inconvenience. On the journey back, she sat silently, clutching the basket of vegetables she had carried all the way. He hadn't even taken it. Her tears fell silently onto the food, soaking the leaves. From then on, things worsened. Michael stopped sending money home regularly. When Grace called, he would answer in a hurry, his voice impatient. "Mother, I'm busy. I'll talk later." Sometimes he wouldn't pick up at all. Neighbors noticed her sadness. They whispered, "Is this not the same son she gave everything for? Look how he abandons her now." Grace said nothing. She prayed. She fasted. She begged God to touch her son's heart. But instead of softening, Michael grew harder. The final blow came one year during a community award ceremony in the city. Michael was being honored for his success. Grace, so proud, traveled down uninvited. She wore her best wrapper, old but neatly washed, and sat quietly at the back of the hall. When the announcer called Michael to the stage, she stood, clapping with tears of joy, shouting, "That's my son!" People turned, curious. "His mother," they whispered. Michael saw her. His face fell. Instead of smiling, he frowned. After receiving the award, he came down, marched straight to her, and whispered angrily, "Mother, what are you doing here? You shouldn't have come. You are embarrassing me." Embarrassing. That word. Grace froze. The joy in her eyes dimmed instantly. She sat back down, her hands trembling. For the first time, she realized her son was ashamed of her. The very woman who had given her life for him. That night, she cried more than she ever had before. She cried not because of hunger, not because of poverty, but because her own child had thrown her love back in her face. And yet, even in her pain, she whispered the same prayer. God, do not let my son forget me. Touch his heart before it is too late. But fate had its own plan. And fate was not yet done with Michael. When the world turns its back on you, you have two choices. Stay on the ground or rise quietly and let your life speak louder than words. Grace chose to rise. After that day in the city, when her son called her an embarrassment, something inside her broke. But something else was born too, a strength she never knew she had. She realized she could no longer wait for her son's love to feed her. She could no longer depend on him to lift her out of poverty. If she was to survive, she would have to carve her own path. So Grace returned home and started small. Very small. With the little money she had left, she bought a few measures of rice, beans, and palm oil. She carried a pot outside her compound, built a tiny wooden stall by the roadside, and began cooking food to sell. The first day, she cooked with trembling hands, wondering if anyone would buy. But as the hot steam rose from her pot and the smell of fresh stew spread through the air, passers-by stopped. One man bought a plate, then another. By evening, the pot was empty. Grace wiped her hands on her wrapper and smiled through her tears. Ah, so I can still do something with my life. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Her little food stall grew popular. Why? Because Grace cooked with love. She served with kindness. She gave extra pieces of meat to children who came hungry, and when a poor farmer could not pay, she told him, "Eat first, my brother. Pay when you can." Word spread quickly. There is a woman by the roadside who sells food, but her food is different. It is sweet, not just in taste but in spirit. Soon, people began traveling from other parts of the village just to eat from her pot. What began as a small survival plan turned into a thriving business. She earned enough to buy bigger pots, more ingredients, and even hire a young girl to help her. For the first time in many years, Grace could breathe. She could afford decent clothes. She could fix her leaking roof. She could even send little gifts to children in the community. Exercise books, pens, and small slippers. Her name grew. People began to call her mother of food. She became respected not only for her cooking, but for her generosity and honesty. Meanwhile, in the city, Michael was also rising, but in a different way. His salary increased. He got promoted. He started living large, driving flashy cars, dining in expensive restaurants, and surrounding himself with friends who praised him. But unlike his mother, Michael's rise was built on pride, not humility. His money went into showing off, not building a future. He looked down on others, and though he had the world's applause, he had no peace in his heart. Grace, on the other hand, was experiencing a quiet triumph. She no longer begged. She no longer waited by the road hoping to see her son's return. Her business kept her busy, her community kept her loved, and her faith in God kept her strong. At night, she would still think of Michael, her heart aching with memories. Sometimes she whispered, "Oh, my son, do you remember the days you lay on my lap and I sang you to sleep? Do you remember the nights I went hungry just so you could eat? How did we get here?" Tears would fall, yes, but unlike before, she wiped them quickly and moved forward, because life had taught her one lesson. If the one you live for forgets you, then you must live for yourself. And then, as though fate had been watching from the shadows, the tables began to turn. One evening, after closing her stall, Grace returned home to find the village chief waiting outside her hut. "Mother of food," he said with a smile. "Your food has fed this community. We cannot let you continue like this without support. From today, we will give you a small space in the village market free of charge to run your business properly." Her eyes widened. Gratitude filled her heart. With a proper space in the market, her food business would grow even more. And it did. Within a year, she was no longer just a roadside cook. She was the woman everyone respected, the one people pointed to and said, "That widow is a blessing to this village." She now had more than she ever thought possible. Enough to save, enough to help, enough to smile again. But far away in the city, the shine in Michael's life was beginning to dim. The same friends who once praised him were introducing him to risky deals. His pride pushed him into investments he did not fully understand. Money came in quickly, but it left just as quickly. While Grace was rising through resilience, Michael was slowly digging his own downfall through arrogance. And soon, fate would bring mother and son face to face again. This time, not as giver and receiver, but as two people standing on opposite sides of life's judgment. Life has a way of humbling those who forget where they came from. It may take time, but sooner or later, the wheel always turns. For Michael, the wheel turned fast. At first, he didn't notice the cracks. His business deals looked shiny, his friends clapped loudly, and his nights were filled with parties. But pride is a dangerous builder. It builds houses on sand. One bad investment led to another. One loan led to another. Before long, the foundation of his wealth began to crumble. His so-called friends disappeared. The same people who once called him brother and boss stopped picking his calls. His car was repossessed. His fine apartment was taken. He tried to fight it, but the walls closed in. And then came sickness. Stress ate into his bones. His once strong body became thin, his eyes hollow. Alone, penniless, and broken, Michael found himself asking the question he had buried for years. "Where is my mother?" Back in the village, Grace's life was different. Her food stall in the market was now a small but thriving business. She was loved, respected, even celebrated. When people passed her stall, they greeted warmly, "Mother of food, God bless you." Children ran to her for small gifts, and widows came to her for advice. She was not rich in money, but she was rich in honor. She lived a decent life, her heart lighter than it had been in years. Still, whenever she sat alone at night, her thoughts drifted to her son. "Where are you now, Michael?" she whispered to the empty room. "Are you eating well? Are you happy?" She had no idea that the boy she once carried on her back was crawling back to her doorstep, broken by life. One evening, a neighbor ran to her stall breathless. "Grace, come quickly. There is a stranger lying weak by the roadside near your house. He keeps calling your name." Alarmed, she rushed over. And there he was, her son. But this was not the proud, well-dressed man she had seen in the city. This was a shadow of him, dirty, sick, thin, and trembling. When he lifted his eyes and saw her, he tried to stand, but fell to his knees. "Mother," his voice cracked like dry wood. "Forgive me." Grace froze. Her heart pounded in her chest. For years she had dreamed of this moment, prayed for his return, imagined how she would embrace him. But now, standing over him, all the wounds of the past came flooding back. The rejection, the shame, the word embarrassment. Tears blurred her vision. Still, she bent down, her trembling hands touching his shoulders. "Michael," she whispered, "my son." He wept openly, clinging to her wrapper. "Mother, I was blind. I was foolish. You gave me everything, and I repaid you with shame. I lost it all, Mother. I have nothing left. Nothing but you." Grace lifted his chin and looked into his tired eyes. For a long moment, silence hung between them. The silence of years wasted, love rejected, and pain endured. Finally, she pulled him into her arms. "My son," she said softly, her tears wetting his hair. "A mother does not stop being a mother. I forgive you, but Michael, you broke my heart." Those words cut deeper than any whip. He sobbed harder, realizing that forgiveness did not erase the scars of abandonment. The days that followed were not easy. Michael stayed in the village, too weak to return to the city. Grace nursed him, feeding him with the same hands that once sacrificed everything for his future. The villagers watched in awe. "Is this not the same son who abandoned her?" they murmured. "And yet, she still takes care of him. Such is the heart of a mother." But the truth remained. Time lost cannot be regained. Michael's health improved slowly, but his pride was gone. He walked with humility, often sitting quietly by his mother's stall, helping where he could. Sometimes, he told the young ones who came to eat, "Respect your parents. Never abandon the ones who gave you life. Learn from me. Don't wait until it's too late." And Grace? She carried both pain and peace. Pain, because her son's betrayal had left scars. Peace, because he had finally returned, humbled and changed. In the end, the story of Grace was not about riches or poverty, but about the priceless love of a mother. A love that sacrifices, a love that endures, a love that forgives, even when broken. And as she often told those who gathered at her stall, her voice soft but firm, "Children, listen well. If you forget everything else, remember this. Never abandon the one who gave up everything for you. For one day, you will search for that love again, and you may find nothing but silence."